Welcome to the session Marine Geology. First, we are discussing about the history of marine geology. What is oceanography? It is the study of Earth's ocean and their interlinked ecosystem, geological, chemical and physical processes associated with these oceans. So, this oceanography has different branches like geological oceanography, chemical oceanography, meteorological oceanography, physical oceanography and biological oceanography. Geological oceanography is mainly deals with the study of geological processes in the ocean, which mainly include the plate tectonics, coastal morphology associated with the oceans, and the chemical oceanography, which is the study of chemistry of the ocean, which means the chemical properties of the ocean. Next is meteorological oceanography. Meteorological oceanography is the study of interaction between atmosphere and the ocean. And the physical oceanography mainly concerned with the physical properties of ocean, which mainly include temperature, pressure conditions of the oceans. And the biological oceanography mainly deals with the study of flora and fauna associated with the oceans. Then, what is marine geology? Marine geology is the study of character and history of the part of Earth that below the sea or ocean. It is an area covers from the beach, marine marshes, lagoons across the continental shelf and down to the deepest part of the ocean. So, geology is the study of Earth, which include the process of origin of Earth, the material made up of Earth and the changes that happen to the Earth after its formation. Then marine geology is the study on the oceans or marine environment. And most of the sedimentary rocks exposed on land were deposited in marine environment. We know there are mainly three types of rock: igneous rocks, metamorphic rocks and sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks are those which is mainly formed by the sedimentation process, and these sedimentary rocks were exposed on land were deposited in marine environments. Next, we are going to the history of marine exploration. Why we are studying the history of marine geology? Because marine geology is a young field and some of the old ideas might have a comeback because we need present studies to we need the old ideas to study the present conditions of ocean floor and to be aware of difficulties and uncertainties in deciphering the dynamic processes associated with the ocean. And the other purpose of studying the history of marine geology is that to appreciate the development of global plate tectonics, which is an excellent example of how science works. Then we are going to the early explorations of oceans. The early explorers used boats to seek new fishing grounds for food, and the ocean facilitated trade and interaction between the cultures. Then in early civilizations, Egyptians developed the arts of shipbuilding and coastal piloting. It was around 4000 BCA. The picture showing the sea vessel made by Egyptians. Next, the role of Pacific navigators in the history of marine geology. And the peopling of Pacific islands required extensive travel in open boats and exceptional navigational skills because the islands of Pacific Ocean were widely scattered. The three major island groups of Pacific Oceans were Micronesia, Melanesia and Polynesia. And this is the chart showing the travel routes of Pacific explorers. And there were no written records exist of Pacific human history before the 16th century. Archaeological evidence suggests that the island occupation by people from New Guinea as early as 4000 to 5000 BC, and the picture showing navigational chart prepared by the Pacific people for traveling through the oceans. And this is the one who sailed on a balsa raft in 1947, whose name is Thor Heyerdahl, who sailed a balsa raft named as Kon-Tiki in 1947 to demonstrate migration of two Pacific Ocean island which is Polynesia. We already discussed about there is 3 island groups in Pacific area, and so this is to demonstrate migration of to Pacific Ocean island Polynesia from South America, which was made by in a balsa rift Kon-Tiki by Thorne Heyerdahl. And the role of European navigators in the history of marine geology. First one is Phoenicians. Phoenicians are first from Western Hemisphere to develop navigational art. It was around 1000 to 600 BCE. They are navigated by familiar coastal landmarks and by stars, and they explored Mediterranean Sea, Red Sea and Indian Ocean. They sailed into the Atlantic to Cornwall, England. They are the first to circumnavigation of Africa, and they also reached the British Islands. The picture map showing the travel routes of Phoenicians, European navigators. These are Greek Herodotus, who produced an inaccurate world map that centered on Mediterranean region in 450 BC. And the map is shown there, and in this map the Mediterranean Sea is centered, and this is surrounded by Libya, East Africa and Asia. Then Greek Pythus. This is the first Greek to circumnavigate England and gauge the length of its shoreline. They sailed northward using a simple method to determine latitude in 325 BC. He developed the method of determining latitude by using the North Star and the relationship between the moon, the phases of moon and tides. And Aristotle was published Meteorologica, a book named as Meteorologica, which is the description of geography and physical structure of Greek world, and another book named as Animalium, which is first known treatise on marine biology. The next European contribution was made by Eratosthenes, who determined Earth circumferences fairly accurately using the trigonometric methods, who mainly observed the specific angle of sunlight that occurred at Alexandria. And the next one is Claudius Ptolemy, who produced fairly accurately the world map of entire Romans that showed latitude and longitude. It was around 150 AD, and the map was shown in the picture. He mainly contributed to the world map of entire Roman, which was included by latitude and longitude. So, the role of Middle Ages in the history of marine geology. It was Middle Ages was mainly started from 500 AD to 1450 AD, and the Arabs were dominant navigators in the Mediterranean Sea. They traded extensively with East Africa, India and Southeast Asia. They learned to use Indian Ocean monsoon winds for their travelling, and the picture showing the map used by these Middle Ages for travelling. Next is the contribution of Vikings. The Viking routes and colonies are shown in the map. There are mainly 2 voyages of Vikings. They are shown by different colors in the map, and they are led by different scientists. And next is Portugal's contribution. First of all, Christopher Columbus, whose purpose is to find a route to Asia and East Indies. And he rediscovered North America using Ptolemy's estimation of Earth's size. It's too small, be miscalculated. And next one is Amerigo Vespucci, and first European. He is the first European to recognize South America as a new continent. And the next scientist who contributed to the history of marine geology is Vasco Nunes de Balbi. And he is the first to see Pacific Ocean by crossing the Isthmus of Panama. The Magellan, who made first expedition to sail around the world, and which is financed by Spain in September 1599. And they started with 5 ships and 260 men to northeastern coast of Brazil. Only 1 ship and 18 men returned, and Magellan was not one of them. So, he made expedition to sail around the world with 5 ships and 260 men. Captain John Cook, who undertook 3 scientific voyages in 1768, 1772 to 1775 and 1778 to 1779. These 3 expeditions devoted to methodological scientific oceanographic data. These expeditions went to Tahiti, New Zealand, Hawaiian Island and Australia. And this was on a secret mission to find a southern continent. Mapped many islands in Pacific and systematically measured ocean characteristics. He used John Harrison's marine chronometer during these voyages, and first accurate maps of Earth's surface was made by these voyages of John Cook, and the picture showing the voyages of John Cook. And this also showing the 3 voyages of John Cook, and they are shown in different colors. And Sir John Ross and Sir James Clerk Ross, they made first accurate deep soundings at high latitudes around Antarctica and Arctic. They collected sediment samples, deep marine organisms, and the similarity of Arctic and Antarctic deep marine organisms showed that the continuity of deep ocean from pole to pole. And by collecting the sediment samples and deep marine organisms, they find the similarity of Arctic and Antarctic deep marine organism by continuity of which showing the continuity of deep ocean from pole to pole. And chronometer, which is invented by John Harrison in 1735. He received a cash prize for invention of this chronometer, and the picture showing the chronometer, and it is a clock or watch which was not affected by waves and motion of the sea, and it is made to determine longitude in the open sea. And next contribution is by Matthew Maury. He considered as the father of physical oceanography. He charted the ocean winds and currents, and his systems for oceanographic data recording was adopted and used around the world in developing charts and trade routes. And his contribution, his book is named as Physical Geography of the Sea in 1855. It is with most recent scientific findings about ocean. And Matthew Fountain Maury, he is the head of Navy US Hydrographic Office, and he is the first submarine geologist, and first deep marine bathymetric map of North Atlantic was made by Fountain Maury, and he recognized mid-Atlantic ridge and he called it as telegraphic plateau, and he also compiled pilot charts for the trading or navigation or traveling through the oceans. And this is the bathymetric map of North Atlantic, which is prepared by Matthew Maury in 1855. Bathymetry. So, we found that Matthew Maury discovered the bathymetric map of Atlantic Ocean. So, what is bathymetry? Bathymetry is the study of beds or flows of water bodies which may be oceans, rivers, streams and lakes, and it is a visual presentation of submerged terrains, and which shows the submarine topography. It is like the topographic map. In topographic map, we are mapping the surface of earth, but it illustrates, this bathymetry illustrates land that lies under the water, and the variation in the seafloor relief or elevation is represented by the color and contour lines called as depth contours or isobars. And the contribution of Charles Darwin. He gathered natural history and oceanographic samples and data while traveling on a 4.5 year voyage on HMS Beagle, and his voyage was on a ship known as HMS Beagle, and he formed 2 theories during these voyages through the HMS Beagle, which is evolution, and formation for atolls. These atolls is a type of coral reef which found in the Pacific. This is the contribution of Charles Darwin to the history of marine geology. During his travelling in HMS Beagle, he recognized the theory of evolution by natural selection. And the major expedition in the history of marine geology is HMS Challenger expedition, which is during the period of 1872 to 1876. This Challenger expedition was the first expedition designed to study marine sciences. This is a 4-year mission under the direction of Charles Wivell Thompson, who is assisted by John Murray. The ship used for HMS Challenger expedition is HMS Challenger, which is from England, and the voyage lasted 4 years and resulted in 50 volume of textbook called the Challenger, and it was from 21st December 1872 to 24 May 1876. And the studies of this expedition included mainly soundings, temperature recordings and dredging of the ocean. About a total of 360 deep sea soundings were made during the 68,900 mile voyage of Challenger expedition, and about 715 new genera and 4,717 new species of living matters were discovered during this expedition, and they circumnavigated the globe with 362 hydrographic stations where they choose for their studies, and made nearly 500 deep soundings, and dredged and cored rocks and sediments. They collected water samples and measured water temperature, salinity, currents during the voyage. HMS Challenger results. They almost covered 70,000 nautical miles. During these miles, they made almost 500 deep ocean soundings. In 8,000 in Marianas Trench, in 8,180 meter they made soundings, and they collected 133 dredge samples, and they also conducted biological and water sampling at 362 stations during the travelling, and they produce a 50 volumes of data. In addition to the bathymetric data, John Murray collected and described sediments during this expedition, and he described the major types of marine sediments and their geographic distribution, and he recognized their relationship to phytoplankton productivity in surface water, and made the first observation regarding the biogeography. He made the first systematic attempt to chart the basins of the world ocean, captured biological samples in mid-water and bottom. In this expedition, discovered marine organisms in the deepest parts of ocean, and sampled and illustrated plankton in various habitats and depths which is not known, and they catalogued and identified 750 new genera and 4,071 new species during the expedition of HMS. This is the picture showing the route of HMS Challenger. This voyage was through South Atlantic, Indian Ocean, Antarctic, Australia, New Zealand, Pacific, Japan and North Atlantic. Sir John Murray took the responsibility for the publication of 15-volume Challenger report, and this Challenger expedition resulted in a better understanding of depths of ocean and the sediments of the deep ocean, its distribution and some processes. The voyage of HMS Challenger taken as beginning of modern marine geology during the history of this marine geology. 20th century marine sciences. The first expedition which uses modern optical and electronic equipments for oceanographic investigation is named as METEOR. It is mainly for the mapping of Atlantic floor. And the next one is Atlantis. its significance is it was built for the sole purpose of ocean study and confirmed the mid-ocean bridge. And the next one is Triste, a blimp-like bathymetry which descended into the Challenger deep area of the Mariana Trench. And the next one is HMS Challenger 2, which found the deeper part of Mariana Trench and called the Challenger Deep. Next is submersibles. First one is bathysphere. It was invented by Bibbe and Barton in 1930s, which is a steel ball with a window, which recirculating air and tether for communication and power, which is very uncomfortable and which is moved with the ship, which allowed first deep water visits. The next submersible is Trieste, which is a sphere attached to large float, which is operated much like a blimp in water, and the propellers is used to move horizontally to which is very limited, which is descended to the bottom of Challenger Deep in Mariana Trench. Next submersible is Alvin, which is a new submersible and which is able to dive to depths of 4,500 meters, which is known for the dives to the Titanic and hydrothermal vents, and which can contain 3 men and not tethered. Next one is Johnson Sea Link, which is used by Harbour Branch Oceanographic Institution in Fort Pierce, which is devoted primarily to research and operating depths of 914 meters up to 4 men and which are not tethered. Next is self-containing diving, which is the first practical methods in middle of 19th century. And the new technologies include ROVs and AUVs. ROV is remotely operated vehicle and unmanned submarine cameras, close, etc. More compact and inexpensive, which can go where submersible can't. And AUV is autonomous underwater vehicle, untethered and self-propelled by computers. And the next new technology is Lorentz C, which is long range navigation, which is based on radio signals from the coast, only functional with Lorentz C transmitters. GPS is the global positioning system which is mainly operated by signals from satellites, which works everywhere. And the next major contribution to the history of marine geology is deep sea drilling project. The deep sea drilling project DSDP, which was begun in 1960s, which is using HMS Challenger, which is a ship that was specially equipped for drilling into the ocean floor beneath several kilometers of seawater. Sediment samples obtained by drilling below seabed helped to reconstruct the history of oceans. The sediment samples were collected during this project, and this helped to reconstruct the history of the ocean. And the many countries were also taking part in this project. They were mainly USA, UK, Japan, Germany, Russia, Australia, France, Canada and many other countries were taking part in this deep sea drilling project. The HMS Challenger of deep sea drilling project was succeeded by a similar but better equipped vessel known as Geology Resolution, which began operations in the International Ocean Drilling Program since 1985. This scientific drilling ship is equipped to drill 5 miles below the ocean surface. To date, it was drilling over 500 wells worldwide. This is showing the major component of constructive plate boundary. We know there are mainly 3 types of plate boundaries, namely divergent plate boundaries, constructive plate boundaries and transform plate boundaries. And the components of constructive plate boundaries are oceanic plate, trench, forearc ridge, forearc basin, backarc basin and oceanic plate. And we know the ocean floor is formed along the constructive plate margin. Next, we are going to the importance of marine geology. Why we are studying this marine geology? Marine geology involves the geochemical, geophysical, sedimentological and paleontological investigation of ocean floor and coastal margins. This marine geology has strong ties to physical oceanography and also plate tectonics. The marine geological studies were of extreme importance in providing the critical evidence for seafloor spreading and plate tectonics. This marine geology provides information about the topography or bathymetry, geological processes and the history of oceans. These all are about the history of marine geology. Thank you so much. Take care.